Welcome to the Whiskey Vault. I'm Daniel Whittington. I'm the Chancellor at Wizard Academy Whiskey Marketing School. This is Hidden Drams. We've got a couple of series where we do different than the normal sitting at the barrel and telling stories. One of them is when someone gifts us something or when I find something that I really want to talk about, but the odds of you getting to try it are really low. And this is one of those. During the Bastards Ball, when we did the tasting at the Tower the day before, Jeff and Dee to me, and I don't know if it's Timmy or to me. I forgot to ask Jeff. They brought this as a gift. I mean, I don't even know what to do with that. Thank you. And I told them I want to review it on the channel, so I'm not going to give you feedback on what I think about it until you see it on the channel. So here it is. Ooh, I made it. Okay. This is a Berry Brothers and Rudd release, which, if you know, is an independent bottling company. These are independent merchants alcohol merchants that purchase barrels from other distilleries and then release under their own brand, but while highlighting the distillery that they sourced it from, along with all of the relevant information on what the barrel was. This is Cameronbridge. Cameronbridge is a grain distillery, and it's not just any grain distillery, it's kind of the oldest grain distillery. And by single grain, we mean column still and using grains that aren't malted barley. One distillery, that's what Scotch single grain is, right? So one distillery, column still, grains that aren't just barley. It could be anything. It could be corn, it could be wheat, sometimes only a handful. I think like Loch Lomond does 100% column still barley, but that's expensive, so most people don't do that. Cameronbridge was founded in 1824, and they were doing pot still at the time. And then they were part of the Haig family, which was the Haigs and the Steins, and there was a lot of overlap back then. Robert Stein originated the first thing that we now know as the precursor to modern column stills. And it was called the patent still. And that was in 1830. I can't remember when he actually invented it, but they implemented it at Cameronbridge in 1830. It was a full year or so later that Aeneas Coffee improved on it a little bit and released the coffee still, and that's when things really started getting rolling. But Robert Stein was the first to do something in that direction, and they started making grain. So Cameronbridge has been making grain whiskey since 1830. Holy crap, 200 years of grain whiskey. And what we have here is a 37-year-old grain whiskey that was distilled in 1984. For those of you doing the math, I was 6 years old, and bottled in 2022, only 2 years ago. That's crazy, and it's so light. Why? Because often in these grain aging, they'll use barrels that are already pretty used, and you'll find some of these grain whiskeys that are 30, 40 years old and even lighter than this. So I'm kind of excited. We don't know what grain they used, but the cask reference is 3028698. If anyone watches this who has any connection with Diageo, because Diageo is who owns Cameronbridge, or Berry Brothers and Rudd, and you can tell me what's the barrel, was it a bourbon cask, and what was the grain of this distillation, that would be so nerdy cool. I would love it. Okay, now Cameronbridge came under the ownership of DCL, the distillers. The DCL became, dominated everything, and it's the precursor to Diageo. First United Distillers and then Diageo. And now is owned by Diageo. And because of that, the grain whiskey made by Cameronbridge goes into all the blends that are owned, not all, but the blends that are owned by Diageo. So you're talking Johnny Walker, J&B, Black and White, Haig, White Horse. These are all Diageo brands. And so you're getting to taste the origins of the base grain whiskey, but 37 years old. Ooh, vanilla cream. Just raw vanilla, almost vanilla cream soda syrup. And then a little bit of just soft wooden notes, but really back there. And then I'm going to argue that there is sort of a citrusy note to this that's like, what is that? It's not lemon, but it's in the direction of citrus instead of fruit. Wait, I mean, but you know, citrus is anyway. Doesn't matter. Citrus specifically in the. I'm gonna get comments. People who are like, you know, citrus is fruit. Yeah, anyway, it's fine. The one thing the internet does not like to give you is the benefit of the doubt. Full stop. Any platform, not just YouTube. No one in the comments of YouTube goes, well, he means well. All right, so it is very simple, which makes sense because when you distill grain whiskey, you're actually distilling it up to a proof that it's almost vodka. And when you do that, you are stripping out a lot of the components that, when they interact with wood, lead to the complexity and density of flavor that you get from a pot still, right? And so to start with, the clear spirit, like the new make that comes off of a column still, is closer to vodka than it is to new make whiskey. It has more flavor than vodka, but it's closer to vodka on the spectrum than it is. And so when you put that into a barrel, there's not as many chemical structures to interact with the oxidation and the barrel additive. And so you get a much simpler flavor profile. That's why a lot of people are not a big fan of the ethanol. When you don't have a lot of other chemical components to hide the ethanol tends to jump out a little bit. And a lot of people are thrown by that because you get these flavors that are sharp and pointy instead of like soft and oily when you're coming off of a column still. But at 37 years old, ooh, I'm starting to get a really wooden note as it sits and opens up. Really, a lot more of the barrel is coming forward. You do get a lot of oxidation, which is nice, and that sort of softens some of the sharpness of the initial profile. And then you do get the barrel additive of whatever it had before, plus, you know, thyme and oak. It's starting to get more interesting, but it's still not what I would call complex. Not surprising, but it's still a nice nose. Oh yeah, in the mouth. In the palate. Got to be fancy, right? A lot of oak. Like the wood is definitely there. To the point where it almost tastes a little smoky, but obviously no. But the wood is real. Like, not as much in the nose, but in that palate, it is dry. And then with this just pure vanilla glaze, like the top of a cinnamon roll or a pound cake. Not quite frosting, but like, yeah, the glaze on a pound cake. Almost like a lemon icing, but it is dense vanilla. Man, if you like vanilla, and what's funny is, it is real. Like there is a whole category of people who are like obsessed with chocolate. There is also a category of people who are very serious about anything vanilla. Vanilla candles, vanilla ice cream, anything in the direction of vanilla. That's their home turf. Man, are you gonna love this? It is absolutely vanilla cream over a simple pound cake with a little bit of a lemon zest almost over the top, and then a slight oaky wooden note behind it. It's 53.8% alcohol. I'm gonna add a little water. Bloop. We'll see what it does with that. Jeff and Dee left me a box of, I mean, it was like 8 or 9 samples of like that they took from their own bottlings. And it's some really interesting, unique stuff on the labels. I haven't tried it yet because I'm gonna sit down and try them with my dad on the back deck at my house. But very generous and very cool. And they have a passion for single grain. And I love that when someone finds they're sort of like, this is our little turf and we're gonna carve it out. And for an age statement, you can get single grain at a fraction of the cost of the same age statement single malt. Fraction. And it gives you the chance to try some really old stuff, which is kind of cool. I mean, what were you doing in 1984 if you were even alive? I mean, what was I doing when I was 6? I wouldn't even, 6 is like kindergarten, right? So I don't even remember what I was doing in kindergarten, like where I went to kindergarten. Who knows? I was probably riding, oh, I know what I was riding around on. I was riding around on a skateboard and a scooter, but we weren't cool. We weren't from California, so we didn't have like the legit brands of scooter and skateboard. But my grandmother worked for a company that made the, was it Nash? That made the skateboards that had partnered with Snoopy and Peanuts to have their characters put on it. So I had like a Snoopy and the bird and like the Peanuts characters on a skateboard and a scooter somewhere around that age. And roller skates, actually. I'm pretty sure it was Nash. All right, with a little bit of water, the oak came forward. Oh, way more complexity. If I added water and dropped this to roughly 50%, the oak comes really forward. All of the tannins and those structures, and it sort of spreads the vanilla out in between them instead of coating them. So think of it as instead of that vanilla cream just layering and burying everything, it cracked and some of the spikes cut through and you get a little bit more character. A little water, I really love this even more. It's very interesting. Not always my go-to. I like a little more depth and oily and heavy viscous and some smoke, but this is super interesting. Really grateful to Jeff and Dee. And cheers to you guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm really glad you're here. So interesting. For a whiskey that's getting much closer to me in age than not. We don't get often the chance to do this, but if you really like this, then like and subscribe. And every once in a while, we'll do something really old.